Canceled? Bloody me canceled. But we brought a baby.
Cancellations are a dime a dozen now, with 2025 seeing especially shocking announcements of which shows were going to be coming to an end. Some of these shows had ulterior motives behind their cancellations. Ahem. But there were more than a few that had the usual reasons: low ratings. A lot of the shows got canceled without much attention. There were a few shows that I had no clue even existed before researching for this video. However, some cancellations were real head-scratchers, with a lot of critical acclaim and even awards attention. Tiny Chef was a notable one from this year, thanks to the viral reaction to their cancellation, devastating everyone who saw poor chef's dejected sobs. 3 thoughts came up for me when I saw the video for the first time. 1, this little puppet crying is so sad, which I think is how we all felt. And 2, why would Nickelodeon cancel a show that has gotten their network an Emmy? Then, the more I thought about it, because I guess I don't have better things to think about, the cancellation of a show despite awards recognition made sense, with a lot of examples through TV history, that proves the point that studios don't care about awards or critical acclaim, or how beloved a show is by its fans or even critics. Their priority is ratings and revenue. That's why shows like The Goldbergs, that after a certain amount of episodes just did lazy parodies with the same exact storyline for every episode, was on the air for 10 years, while something like Community, a show that did something different with the sitcom formula, was always on the brink of cancellation from the beginning, before eventually getting the axe from its network for good. Both are shows that reference classic movies and TV shows and their respective tropes. However, one was consistently in the 50s and 60s viewership rank, a decent rank, with mixed reception, while the other was in the 90th to 130th viewership rank, which is pretty bad. But it was nominated for an Emmy for 4 years, won a Critics' Choice Television Award, and still has a constant placement on Great TV Shows list. Community's viewership numbers were a lot worse than The Goldbergs, despite it being more critically acclaimed and having more of a diehard fan base, albeit a niche one. So Community only went for 6 seasons, the last one being on Yahoo Screen after initial cancellation from NBC after season 5. Meanwhile, Goldbergs had 10 seasons plus a spinoff. Ratings determine how many people watch a show and the demographics of who is watching, based on data from Nielsen Ratings, the main company involved in obtaining TV viewership information. Ratings and the demographics of ratings are important because they guide advertisers on what shows to advertise on and what kind of products will appeal most to the kind of people who watch specific shows. The more viewers a show has, the more eyes there are on ads during commercial breaks. This entices advertisers to pay for space on the network, that then goes towards recouping whatever was spent to make the show and to hopefully make a profit. Networks want their investment on their TV shows back, so they want as many advertisers as they can get. Shows like Pushing Daisies and one of my personal favorites, Arrested Development, as critically acclaimed as they were, failed to bring in the large viewership numbers that advertisers would fight over, so they were canceled. However, even ratings alone can't save a show from the chopping block sometimes. Even if a show does have decent to even great ratings, a show can get canceled if its production costs are high, or if the show does not appeal to the demographics that advertisers want to appeal to. High production costs were the case for Netflix's The Residents. Despite being recently nominated for 4 Emmys, The Residents' production costs were high, due to the set recreation of the White House and a large ensemble cast. And while the viewership of The Residents was pretty good, it was not the kind of viral show that Netflix aspires for, so it did not offset the high cost put into it. In other words, Netflix had a Shondaland TV comedy drama mystery on its hands with The Residents, but wanted it to have the low cost, viral reception, and sky-high viewership numbers like that of its other property, Trainwreck. The original series of Star Trek, as much of a pop culture behemoth as it has been for multiple decades, was actually canceled after only 3 seasons thanks to its high production cost. It had pretty good ratings, but not enough to offset the high cost of its production. NBC was truly chomping at the bit to cancel the show, wanting to get rid of it in the middle of season 2, but held off for a little after a fan-led letter-writing campaign, pleading with the network to keep the show going. Even seeing the intense fan reception to Star Trek was not a deciding factor for whether the show stayed or went after a certain point, with cost-benefit analysis being prioritized instead. Likewise, extenuating circumstances can get a show canceled. Glow and Tiny Chef are both examples of this. The COVID-19 pandemic was responsible for Glow getting canceled, even though they had already shot an episode pre-pandemic of what was supposed to be their next season. Many factors played a part, with production delays because of the pandemic and the higher costs that the show would have due to new COVID protocols being major obstacles the show faced to get renewed. Plus, there were the high cost of a large ensemble cast, difficulties in shooting in LA, and the fact that the characters were required by the story to be in close contact, which all contributed to Netflix pulling the plug on Glow, despite it being a fan favorite. Similarly, Tiny Chef Show was a victim of the Paramount Skydance merger. Anytime someone new or a new company comes into play, shows are at risk of not being continued. Tiny Chef Show was unfortunately caught in the middle, with the creators being told that their contract would not be getting renewed amid the negotiations between Paramount and Skydance that became drawn out while waiting for approval for the merger from the FCC, on top of Tiny Chef Show's poor viewership. Going further back, Twin Peaks is another example of how extenuating circumstances can get a show canceled. Having extremely high ratings in the beginning, the highest ratings ABC had had in 4 years, and being a water cooler show that everyone wanted to talk about who killed Laura Palmer, it seemed like Twin Peaks couldn't fail in its first season. Well, that was before ABC shot itself in the foot. Despite having a bona fide hit on their hands, ABC decided enough wasn't enough and pushed the showrunners, the forever iconic David Lynch.
Elaborate on that.
No, I won't.
And Mark Frost to solve the Laura Palmer case before they had originally intended. Lynch and Frost wanted the Laura Palmer case to be resolved at the very end of the series, so ABC pushing them to do it way in advance wrecked the interest viewers had in the show after the focus was turned from the main murder plot point, that was what drew people in the first place, to several lesser side plots that couldn't keep the interest in the show going. Ratings dropped and the show was canceled at the end of season 2, on a cliffhanger ending that wouldn't get resolved until Twin Peaks: The Return in 2017, 25 years later. What these shows and so many more can attest to is that it really doesn't matter how much a show is appreciated, how loyal its fans are, or even how highly it's thought of by the public or the industry itself. All that matters is the profit the show generates to the network, regardless of the show's quality. There's a quote by a longtime movie producer named Peter Gruber that perfectly describes the whole thinking process of why amazing shows can get canceled so easily, while mediocre or even bad shows can last as long as a decade. It's called show business, but it should be called show business. If you've made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. Comment below what shows you were bummed got canceled. I have a lot, but one that always gets to me was a show on TBS called Wreck that maybe 3 other people watched too. That was basically a spoof on Lost that had Rhys Darby in it, Zach Cregger, a lot of really funny people in it. Anyways, thank you again for watching.